It's 9 p.m. Wednesday night, and I am just flailing around. This is week 3 of the 52 Ancestors Challenge, and I've got nothing. My notes are all perfectly lined up, my laptop is humming, but my brain is just stuck on one question: nicknames. Where do they come from? Why do some make perfect sense while others, like Shib, S-H-I-B, seem to defy all logic? I mean, Shib? So today I'm going to use a couple of resources to help me get unstuck. My favorite writing exercise and one of the latest AI research tools. Thanks for joining me. I'm Nancy from Legacy Carvers, and I like to share old family stories and new tools to help us tell them in different ways. And I hope I can inspire you to find your family stories too. And by the way, Shib is my grandfather's brother. His legal first name was Lauren. Do you want to know the origins of that nickname, Shib? Me too. I really want to know. The writing exercise that usually gets me going when I come up blank is from a book titled Storyworthy. It's written by Matthew Dix, who is very good at telling stories. And in this exercise, you take a subject and you write about your first, last, best, and worst experiences or memories regarding that subject. I'm not sure where this originated, but Storyworthy made it popular. And in this case, I'm going to change worst to wildest. Okay, my first nickname, and the one I have used the most, is Auntie Hez, H-E-Z. That's what I called my Aunt Esther. Back in the day, Hez and her siblings would sneak up to the attic. They would grab their pretend instruments, hers was a washboard, and they would sing along to the Hoosier Hot Shots, which was a popular band of the day. This band also had a washboard player named Hezzy.
Are you ready, Hezzy?
See? A classic nickname backstory. And these backstories are very helpful in understanding our ancestors. Now, the last, most recent nickname discovery that I have, well, it has to do with an old college yearbook. But I'm going to tell you more about that in a little bit. My best nickname from my childhood was Nancy Clancy. This is what Auntie Hez called me. I love that name. I guess I've always been a sucker for a quaint bit of rhyming and alliteration, and a lot of nicknames have rhyming components in them. And many nicknames have to do with physical characteristics like Hulk or Goldilocks. Or sometimes it's the opposite. A really tall guy will be named Shorty. Sometimes you see nicknames based on professions too, sometimes with a touch of irony. My grandfather, for example, he had a habit of saying, well, let's just say things that were not strictly true. His Holt County homestead papers list him as 49 years old, except that year he was actually 38. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Grandpa, my dad says he used to embarrass the whole family when they would move to a new town, and Grandpa would try to convince his new employer that he was 20 or 30 years older than he really was. And I don't know how many other tall tales he spun, but I'm guessing it was enough because his brothers called him the Professor. And speaking of my grandfather's family, they win the prize for wildest nicknames. Great Uncle Orrin went by Nin. Uncle Oliver was Audie. And then there was Uncle Lauren. Shib. Shib. So, to try and crack this code, especially Shib, I'm going to try out something new. It's Google Gemini 1.5 Pro with deep research. Boy, that's a mouthful. This is like Google's version of Perplexity AI, which is a popular research assistant. You tell it what you want to research, and it generates a report from various web articles, complete with citations. So let's ask for an in-depth report on nicknames. Here's the website. To get to deep research, currently you have to have a subscription. So just choose deep research from the drop-down box here, and we'll go to this chat box at the bottom. So let's see. Let's tell it to give me an in-depth report on the history of nicknames for an audience of genealogists and family historians. Maybe we'll talk about the origins, which are most common, and maybe include any relevant books or YouTube videos about nicknames. That should do it. Just for fun, let's ask for this in Keith Morrison style. You know, the news reporter from Dateline NBC? So give me a news story format in the style of Keith Morrison. Maybe the Keith Morrison part is a bit much, but it amuses me. So It's already pulling together information. While it's running, I should mention it is still AI, so I always double check the sources before quoting anything. Now, you can see it has created a report for me. It says that back in the day, people didn't commonly have surnames. I wonder how far back. Let's go ask. It has this chat box where you can ask additional questions. So it says it depends on the country and region, but for instance, in England, surnames started to catch on in the 11th century during the time of William the Conqueror and Richard Lionheart, and it became more common by the 14th or 15th centuries. So before surnames, nicknames helped you distinguish one Mary or John from another, and they also helped distinguish between family members with the same name. So we were dumb enough or smart enough to name you Ken the Fourth. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I always thought it was cool because I was the fourth.
This reminds me of the Ken situation in our family. We've got 4 generations of Kenneth. To keep track of everybody, we had Kenneth and then Ken and
Kenny. Sometimes I was little Kenny. Sometimes they would call Dad Kenny and it would confuse me.
In the olden days, people added in or kin to the end of words to make them diminutive. So John became Jack because when the Normans invaded Britain in 1066 AD, they brought this custom along of adding the kin. They also pronounced John as Jen, so little John became Jenkin. And then over time, it appears this gravitated to Jackin and finally to Jack. In the Middle Ages, it was common to shorten names too, and it was popular to use rhyming nicknames like I mentioned before. That's how Margaret got the nickname of Peggy. It started with shortening Margaret to Meg, then the rhyming game came into play. Peg rhymes with Meg, and then it turned into Peggy. And you can see similar patterns in Richard to Dick and William to Bill. And some nicknames also came from replacing the first letter of a name with an easier-to-pronounce consonant. That's how Edward might become Ted. And I wonder if that's how we got Nin. Maybe it's the result of dropping the first letter of Oren and using a new consonant at the beginning? It really seems like maybe one of his siblings mispronounced his name when he was little, and that mispronunciation just stuck as his nickname. The report also gives a list of nicknames that you might stumble across in old documents, and I think this is pretty useful for genealogists. You've got Bab for Barbara, Bart for Bartholomew, Bess for Elizabeth, and Sandy for Alexander. When you're knee-deep in old records and suddenly see Sandy, you'd be glad to know it might be Alexander you're looking at. Well, I feel like Keith Morrison would have done better than Gemini here on this report, but it is a really good starting point for further research. It pulled together a list of the websites that it searched, and it has this chat feature for asking follow-up questions. What about Shib, that most confusing of all nicknames? Let's use this chat again and see if Gemini has any ideas about Shib. No, it's as confused by the name as I am. All it says is, family memories might hold the key to understanding this unique moniker. Right. Thanks. The people with the memories are all no longer alive. As Keith might say, here we have a nickname that whispers of untold stories. But what about that last nickname, the recent discovery that I mentioned earlier? So, this last spring, I was at my cousin's house in Portland. I took a trip down there to visit and work on a funeral video for her sister's memorial. This is the family of Auntie Hez, and this is the first of her children that we had lost. We were sad, we were tired, we'd been working on the video for hours, pictures, stories, you name it. And that's when she gave me this old yearbook she had bought on eBay. Did you know you can buy old yearbooks on eBay? Anyway, she gave it to me and said, look on page 84. Now, she knows that I already have my mom's yearbook from that year, so I was surprised she wanted to give me another copy, but when I turned to page 84, there it was. My mom's autograph. It wasn't her yearbook, but the owner was in her biology class and he obviously asked her to sign it, so she did. She signed it, yours, Molecule. Molecule. I had no idea anybody ever called her that. My mom was an elementary ed major and a biology minor, and she was 4 feet 10 inches tall, and she weighed about 88 pounds. But she walked so fast I could barely keep up with her. She said it was from learning to keep up with the long-legged college boys when they walked across campus. So, I think I was wrong. Just because the people with the memories are no longer alive, that doesn't mean the memories are all lost. Here we are, almost 80 years after she signed this yearbook, and Mom has left me a new memory. Molecule. Now, maybe in the future there will be some sort of AI tool or search technique that will help me find out why my Uncle Lauren was called Shib. But you know what? Sometimes a nickname is just a nickname. The story is just lost, and that's okay too, because sometimes you get lucky and find a molecule when you weren't even looking.
Dear Bob, congratulations, and much happiness and success. Remember me in Columbia Hall. Bug House. Molecule. S. Olson.
If you are staring at a blank page, try the first, last, best, and worst exercise. It might just unlock a memory or two. I'm going to put links to the resources I mentioned down in the show notes, and also a link to the full Gemini report. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what the wildest nickname is in your family. Does anybody still call you Little Kenny?
Not really. I know Grandma used to.
I'm gonna let you go, but thank you for talking with me.
Okay. Love you, Mom.
Love you too, sweetie.